The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, a very insensitive Duke of Dice, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the gateway city, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and probably not role-playing games. Today, the New Look Dukes review The Hunger from Renegade Games and designer Richard Garfield. Then the Dukes look back at their review of Holi in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice. Oh, boy. Oh.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 268, which we're calling Seasons Feedings. Thanks to Breakdown 777. I'm just kidding. I'm not that bad. This is episode 268, Seasons Feedings. This episode named by Breakdown 777, which, Alex, you admitted you had to check and make sure that wasn't yet another alter ego of mine.
Yes.
Because this is Breakdown 777's first episode title. We're talking about two games. We're talking about The Hunger, and we're vampire game, right? And we're talking about Holi, which is about a Hindu festival. And so there's the seasons and the feedings instead of like seasons greetings. Very clever. Congrats, Breakdown 77, on what may be your first of many successes.
Ooh.
I don't know. Maybe.
Sean.
A lot of pressure.
Sean.
Yes.
Sean. There is an elephant in the room to address.
Okay, let's address that elephant.
Sort of. Well, there have been, so first of all, if you're a first-time listener, welcome. That was probably a weird thing if this is your first episode and you heard Sean just coughing right off the bat.
Yeah.
Super
good radio.
Two, there have been many moments in the history of the Dukes of Dice when I've been, for lack of a better word, a jerk.
Uh-huh.
I would say this is the fastest recovery we've had from said jerkitude.
Okay.
I would think this was a less than 12-hour Dukes of Dice related thing.
Crisis.
But let me be clear. Yeah, crisis. A crisis in the Duchy. Sean, why don't you give the context, and then I will give the response I gave.
Sure.
And some behind the scenes stuff for folks.
So behind the scenes. First off, we get help naming all of our episodes from our Board Game Geek Guild number 2008, and we'll give you the runners up at the end of the episode. We delayed a week. My whole family got COVID. We got COVID, and all four of us, and it was pretty wild. What I will say is that it was, in the grand scheme of things, it was fairly mild for all of us. All of us, including my youngest, who's almost 8, we're all boosted. The three of us, the older three of us that could be, were boosted. Boosted, right?
Boosted.
Sure.
Yep.
So it's fairly mild overall. And what's funny, kind of funny, is we went to a concert. We went to go see JoJo Siwa. You know JoJo, Alex?
I know the name.
Okay. We went to see her. We were actually scheduled to see her like March 15th, 2020. That's when we initially got the tickets for, and then the shutdown happened, and then they delayed it a year, and then they delayed it another year, and they were like, all right, well, we're going to do it. We don't care that it's the Omicron peak, but we're going to do it. So we went. I purchased N95 masks, so we'd be fine. We went, and then we got Omicron. Although it wasn't from JoJo or from the concert itself. The way the timing worked out. We actually think we got it when Raquel was helping her cousin move, because it turned out her cousin's uncle came down with it a couple days before we started coming down with it. So we think that was sort of the vector path, so to speak. So yeah, we got it. And I still have a bit of a lingering cough. It's not too bad, but I think the fatigue, I've been pretty fatigued. Like I would normally get up pretty early, get a little bit of work done, then get everyone else up and get ready for the day. And I can't do that. Like, I can't wake up early anymore. It's gotten better. I think it's gotten better. But yeah, we all get COVID, and that's why we delayed the podcast a week. Is that the necessary background, Alex?
Yeah, it kind of jumps forward just a little bit in the story, in that my response when you said, hey, I think we need to delay a week, we've all got COVID, my dumb self answered, well, why don't you just try and play the game at home? Let's try and record anyway. Seems great to me. And not the most sensitive, caring, empathetic answer I could have given in that moment. And I realized it reasonably quickly, as in I called and apologized the next morning. But it's something about the length of this pandemic. I think there has been a loss of empathy and kind of connection. So didn't feel like myself, didn't feel good about it, apologized quickly.
Yeah, no, you did.
The show isn't ending because of that. So that's good news. But sorry about that. That was dumb.
Well, and we talked about that. We hashed that out. And I appreciate that. So yeah, it was interesting. So the concert was on Wednesday. Raquel, we stayed in a hotel because it was in Las Cruces, which is about 3 hours south of us. That next morning, Thursday, Raquel woke up what we now realize was achy, but she just thought she was really sore because the beds were terrible. The beds were like awful. And she thought like she was just hurting from the bed. And then the next day I started feeling symptomatic, but I was like, no, I think it's just allergies. In the middle of the day though, I drove home. We had 4 at-home tests. I drove home in the middle of the day and I tested and it was negative. 15-minute test. It was negative. I'm like, okay. Actually went out that night, to play Warhammer. And then the next night, Saturday, Raquel and I were scheduled to do her birthday dinner. We had a hotel reserved, which is what we do on her birthday. We get a hotel, go out for a nice dinner. And then Saturday morning, she was just like, you seem pretty miserable. Do you want to cancel? And I'm like, yeah, let's cancel. And then the next day, Sunday, I felt even worse. And I had 2 in-person hearings scheduled on Monday. And I'm just like, man, I can't go into the courthouse because you have to answer all these questionnaires about whether you have symptoms. I'm like, I don't have COVID, but I have COVID-like symptoms, but I'm sure it's just allergies, even though I felt pretty nasty. And so I tested Sunday night again, and sure enough, I was positive. And then we tested Chewy. She was positive. We tested Mariah. She was positive. We didn't bother testing Raquel because we were out of tests, but yeah. And I think it was Sunday night that I reached out to you.
Not ideal.
So this was the 4th time the Dukes almost ended. Is it 4? We have 4?
Oh, if it's not more than 4, I would be surprised.
There were 3. I feel like there were 3 distinct times, but there were 4, or this was the 4th, and I was like, what the hell? And I'm like, I am not going to respond tonight because I was already thinking like, all right, so I'm going to blow up the podcast. I'm going to scalp 2 of the tickets to Ben Folds in April. Like, we're going to fly out to St. Louis.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not going to respond tonight, and I'll respond tomorrow. But then, yeah, you called. But then you called, and we hashed it out. So it was good. Good stuff.
Yeah, there wasn't much hashing out to do. I was being an idiot. And so, sorry for being an idiot. Glad that's not a thing anymore. So, in any case, I'm also glad you've also recovered from this. Yeah. Great. Games? Or do we talk about the brand new look of the Dukes of Dice? Brought to you by Kwanchai.
Kwanchai Moriya, to be clear.
Yes. Well, yeah. Not the other Kwanchai.
Yeah.
Who does board game art.
Yeah, not that one. Yeah, we got a pretty sweet logo, Alex. So by the time you're listening to this, it should be deployed everywhere. At the time of recording, it's on Twitter, Facebook, the Guild. And then I need to figure out how it's going to start adorning our episode cards, whatever those are called. Because I'm not sure how we do that. Because it's not like a simple logo. It's 2 portraits basically. So
yes.
So tell us about the logo, Alex, on this non-visual medium that we have here.
It is super cool. We look like space commanders. This is something. So Kwanchai, many years ago, at this point, reached out as part of our interview series, and did an interview with him and have since talked to him at conventions and hung out from time to time, stayed in touch. He obviously does incredible work, been a huge fan of his for a long time. So I reached out and said, hey, we've had, a logo for a while, and was curious if you'd be interested in doing some sort of painting or portrait as part of a refresh. And he said, absolutely. And so he did that. And it took a number of weeks. There were probably several weeks we could have released this earlier because we've had it in hand for some time and just kept forgetting to talk about it and deploy it. But yeah, it's out in the wild now, and I would say broadly a really strong response from everyone. So thanks to everyone for the kind words. I thought Kwanchai killed it. I thought it looked amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty awesome. So I had posted something to our Patreon supporters, and then I kind of posted the same thing in the guild a little bit later. And basically, there's like, I don't know if people realize it, but there was a lot of like thought that went into the original logo. And what I really enjoy is that so much of that was kind of carried over into the new logo, like similar themes and whatnot. Rory mentioned to me, said, I like your new logo. You, Sean, look like the lead detective, and Alex looks like the junior detective. So
it's about right.
Oh, sorry. Then in parentheses, in training.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Also maybe accurate too. I don't know.
Which reminds me of Murderville. Have you been watching Murderville on Netflix?
We have.
Alex?
Yeah, we've seen some episodes. Yeah. So this is on Netflix for folks who don't know, and has Will Arnett as a main detective, and then a celebrity of some kind as a detective trainee intern who kind of accompanies him. They have a murder to solve. There's a solution to said murder. There's no full script. There's sort of a script for some of the actors, sort of not. And they improv their way through it. And we've seen about half the episodes. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's really good. I've really enjoyed it. I've got one episode left. But
okay.
But yeah, so definitely check out the new logo. It is really good. Like you said, Kwanchai killed it. And it's awesome. Like, I don't know what else to say.
Sean, was it bittersweet because the logo that we've been using was something that came from your heart and soul from day one of the podcast?
Yeah, it was a little bittersweet. And like I said, I if you go to the guild, there's a whole write-up on it, kind of the influences of the old logo. But like I said, I think there was enough elements that were carried through and themes that were carried through. But yeah, no, I think it's awesome. Like, I am by no means a graphic designer. And I feel like our logo was a nice little workhorse for a long time. And now we got something even cooler. So.
Very good. Well, hey, let's talk about games we've been playing. And Sean, you mentioned no new plays, but some interesting things going on for you.
Yeah, kind of. I missed, Dukes of Dice Wednesday night, and then I had to scramble to get extra plays in of the Hunger. So no new plays to talk about so much, but some essential Sean gamingness, which I think will make sense. Do you want me to lead it off, or do you want to lead it off?
You lead it off, because there's a logistical thing with one of mine, and we'll save that for last.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about Magic, and I'm going to talk about Warhammer 40,000, because, like I said, essential Sean. So first, with Warhammer, I have joined a Crusade League, which would be a method or a way, Alex, that you would be interested in playing, but don't worry about it. You're not going to need to do it. Basically, this is the full game, the Warhammer 40,000 game, and the Crusade is a more narrative-driven, way to play the game, and your units get experience points. You can cash those experience points in for certain types of upgrades, which can be things called battle honors or enhanced weapons. A whole bunch of other things. Also, if your units die in a game, they're not dead, but they may receive battle scars from having died, which are certain drawbacks. You receive these requisition points, which can be spent on other upgrades. So it's that kind of thing, where, Alex, where you and I like, where you're building up these units, whether it's a character in an RPG or a character in Pathfinder the Adventure card game, you're building them up over time. Cool things are happening. It's been a lot of fun. So I got my very first game of Crusade in on that Friday that I started feeling symptomatic. I let people know, and nobody got COVID after that, so that's good. But I got my first play in there. I lost because I was playing someone who had several more Crusade points than me, and there's a catch-up mechanic, but it's not a great catch-up mechanic. And then since my quarantine ended, I was able to play 2 back-to-back games. I lost the second one, and then I won the third game. So it's been fun, and I'm doing cool stuff, upgrading my units. I'm once again playing with my Necrons, who I played, if you'll recall, I was doing an Escalation League about 6 months back or so. So I'm playing with my Necrons again because I'm also trying to get them ready. There's going to be a Warhammer 40K tournament here in Albuquerque at the end of the month. And so I've got some final touches to do on some units, including the Silent King, Alex, who is this big, bad mamma jamma. Like, he's super cool looking, and I'm a little intimidated to paint him. But he's awesome.
Okay.
So,
like, how big are we talking, size-wise?
Okay. So compare one of your orcs.
Okay.
Right? So, first off, the Silent King, by the way, he is this, like, long-lost Necron king that ruled over the entire empire. They've since split into different dynasties. And he has been gone for, like, millions of years, literally millions of years. And he has returned. So he has with him these Triarch menhirs, which are these big, like, stone obelisks. So if you were to take 2 orcs, put them side by side, and then stack them up 3 high, that would be 1 each of these stone menhirs. Okay. Now the Silent King is, I would say, 8 of those menhirs bundled together. So this thing's massive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm super excited.
That's a beefy king.
He's a beefy king, and he does some wonderful stuff. I'm very excited to play with him, but a little intimidated to get him painted. But that's okay. I'll make it. So anyway, that's some 40K stuff, including 40K Crusade.
Lovely. Well, I was over at Jamie Stegmeier's the other night and got in 2 new plays there. I will talk extensively about one of them, and the other one, we have to have a little logistical conversation. Ooh. Oh. So the first one I'll talk about is a game called Scout. This is an Oink Games game designed by Kei Kajino. Oink, best known for their tuckbox-sized games. Fake Artist Goes to New York is one a lot of folks might know. What's the submarine one? Deep underwater adventure, deep sea adventure.
Deep sea adventure.
Deep sea adventure. One of my favorites. Amazing push your luck game. This is a very cool card game called Scout, and it's one of the rare games you'll see, Sean, where you have to shuffle the cards both directions. And what I mean by that is you have to shuffle the deck as you typically would a pack of cards, but also the orientation of the cards needs to be shuffled as well, the position within the deck. Because how this game works is you will get dealt out a hand of cards. The cards have 2 numbers on them, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. So you might have a 9 on top, a 4 on the bottom of the same card. The cards are dealt to you, and similar to Bonanza, I think also does this with positional cards in your hand. Where a card is cannot be moved. So when you pick up your hand, that's how your cards are, and you either have them held up one direction, or you can, at the very start of a round, flip your entire hand of cards, not changing the position of those cards. This is a ladder climbing game. Basically, on your turn, you have to top the previous set. So if I've played a single card that's a 4, you could play, Sean, a 6 or a 7 or an 8 to top that. Or you could play a run of cards next to each other, a 1 and a 2, or a pair, or so on and so forth. There's more valuable sets. If you choose to play a higher valued set, you take the cards of the previous person and add them to your score pile. Congrats, you now score that card at the end of the game. The cards in front of you then sit. Let's say, Sean, you can't top my set. You would then scout, which is grabbing one of the cards from the set from the outside. So if it's a 3-card run, you can only grab, say, if it was 1, 2, 3, you could only grab the 1 or the 3. And then you could add that card back into your hand in any orientation, in any position. So if I grabbed, again, a 4 or a 9, I could put it in as a 4 or a 9, and I could put it anywhere in my hand next to each other. The trick when you're building these sets, Sean, and this is why the position within your hand matters, is I can't shuffle the position. So if I want to play a pair of 3s, they have to be physically next to each other in my hand in order to play those cards. You will play these cards out until one person goes out, doesn't have any cards left in hand, or everyone else after you passes. can't top the set you have even after scouting and pulling cards from your deal. You'll then score based on how many times people scouted from you. You get 1 point for every time that happens, and then all the cards you've banked minus any cards left in hand. That's your score. You play that over a certain number of rounds. That's Scout. Hard to describe in podcast form. You have to see the visual of these cards, but just imagine these cards kind of static in place, providing a really cool, quick playing puzzle of a game. I insta-bought this. Really good game. You can find it off of the Board Game Geek store. But if you like Oink games and you like intriguing, puzzly card games that play quickly, this should be right up your alley. So that's Scout from Oink Games.
You know what, Alex? Suzanne talked about this when she was on the podcast, and my recollection was I went and bought it from the BGG store too, and I haven't gotten it, and now I'm wondering, did I finish the transaction or not?
Oh.
Huh.
I just ordered 3 or 4 games from the BGG store, which are on their way. So I'll let you know if said game exists.
Well, I'll check. I'll check. Let me double check. Let me double check my emails. Maybe
okay.
because I've certainly done that before. Where I'm like, oh, I'm ordering this thing, and then I forget to hit the final button, and I think I did it, and whatever. But yeah, Scout sounds really interesting. And it looked really cool.
Really cool game. Really, really simple, elegant mechanic. If you like ladder climbing games like Teach You, this will be right up your alley. This is kind of non-partner Teach You. So nice game, really nice game, and very enjoyable. So cool. That's Scout. Back to you, Sean.
All right, Alex. Well, now it's time for some Magic the Gathering talk. Tomorrow night is the pre-release for the new set Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which I'm very excited for. We're returning to the Kamigawa plane, which was a Japanese-inspired plane, but now it's thousands of years in Kamigawa's future, and it is cyberpunk. This is the first time, we've done steampunk. This is the first time we've done cyberpunk in Magic. Very excited. I watched, there's a podcast called Limited Resources with Luis Scott Vargas, who's a Magic pro, and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting about Marshall Sutcliffe, another pro, and he's done a bunch of commentary for Wizards of the Coast, and they always talk about the limited strategies, and they rate the cards. There's a 4-hour video that they have where they rate, not read, that's a weird word, where they rate every common and uncommon from the set. I watched the whole thing. So I'm going with Nick. I invited Jeremy. Hopefully Jeremy will want to join along. We're going to go to Amazon Active Imagination. What is happening? Amazon Imagination? I don't know what that means. Active Imagination tomorrow night to play in that pre-release event. But I did get something in the mail today that I'm super excited for. Alex, this is a dumb question. Do you remember me talking about secret lairs on the podcast before?
No.
Okay.
Of course not.
So the whole deal with Magic is that it's kind of a lottery, right? You open packs and maybe you get some cool cards, maybe you don't. Somewhat predatory in nature, but hey, it's baked into the cake at this point. Of course, you could buy things. You could buy singles on a secondary market. But recently, within the last 2 years or so, Wizards of the Coast has been doing these secret lair drop series where they will typically take pre-existing cards and either give them some brand new crazy art treatment, or there's some sort of theme, and then they'll sell them to you so you know exactly what you're getting. And it's somewhere between 5 and 8 cards. And it's $20-$30, sometimes $40, depending on the cards, depending on what their value is in the secondary market. They've been doing, I think they did 40 last year, and they're up to 20 or 30 this year. Maybe not that many. It's still February. Not that many this year. That's false. They did 40 last year. I've purchased, I think 5 or 6 of these. One of them that I purchased was Bob Ross lands. So basic lands that all have Bob Ross art. Super cool. Super, super cool. So I'm going to show this on camera to you. I don't know if you can see that, Alex. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Good commentary. Yeah. Stranger Things.
I can see the thing you're showing me.
Secret Lair Stranger Things. So like I said, they typically will do pre-existing cards. They have, however, done new unique cards. They started with The Walking Dead, which was a huge A lot of uproar in the community about The Walking Dead. I did not buy The Walking Dead cards. It didn't seem Magic adjacent enough. But at the same time, Stranger Things, the Netflix show, does to me. But I also like Stranger Things much more than I like The Walking Dead. Even though I've read a bunch of the comics and I watched the first 5 seasons or so. But yeah, so these are, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards, including Chief Jim Hopper, Alex. He's a red and white card. Have you watched Stranger Things?
A little bit.
Oh, geez. Dustin, Gadget Genius. He's blue and white.
Like half of the first season.
Wow, you're a terrible person. 11, the Mage, and she's Grixis, which is blue, red, and black, and I think that's perfect. That perfectly encapsulates her character. Lucas, Max, Mike, the Dungeon Master, Will, the Wise. I have a Clue token, which is just, it's from the mom's, her letter thing that she does to try and, anyway. But the really cool thing, Alex, so there's also the Mind Flayer. See the Mind Flayer there, Alex?
Okay.
Do you know where the Mind Flayer is from?
The other side?
The Upside Down.
The Upside Down.
And so here's what I'm going to do, Alex. I'm going to flip the card over on the vertical axis.
Okay.
And the card is upside down. The magic card, the magic symbol is upside down. So basically, they printed him upside down because he's from the Upside Down.
I mean, that's a cool touch, I guess.
It's a super cool touch. There's also, and this was really cool. This was not advertised. Sometimes they'll add in something extra. It's a land, the Hawkins National Laboratory, and it's a double-sided land, which means that it can transform. You do a certain thing and it transforms, it flips over. And again, normally when a land transforms, you flip it on the vertical axis and then the other side will be right side up. But again, the flip side here is literally the upside down, and it's upside down. And even, I don't know if you can see, there's a land symbol in the upper left-hand corner.
Yes.
That's the land symbol, and it is an upside down land symbol on the other side. I think it's awesome.
It also says the Upside Down.
Yeah, I get that too. So these cards are legal, I believe, in Legacy, which is the oldest format aside from Vintage, and then they're also legal in Commander. I don't know that I'm gonna necessarily put these in any decks. This is more just sort of the collector side of me. I like Stranger Things. I like Magic cards. It seems pretty cool. I showed them to Chewy. She was pretty excited. Mariah was pretty excited. Raquel was pretty excited because we're all big Stranger Things fans. And you should watch Stranger Things, Alex. It's really good.
Okay. Well, maybe at some point.
All right.
There's a long list of shows vying for my attention, Sean. You have to be pretty special to get me to watch. Just saying. Anyway. Anyway. Sean.
Yep.
As folks may know, Jamie Stegmaier from Stonemaier Games has a specific way he will release information about games. And certain content will be unfolded at a different point. It's part of the idea of having the game available and folks understanding it and pre-orderable much closer to when you can actually get it, et cetera, et cetera. I played, this is we're not breaking embargo at this point, Sean. I played a copy of Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest, the new release coming from Stonemaier Games, which is a reprint, well, not reprint, second edition, I would say, upgraded edition, revamped edition, of the original Libertalia, designed by Paolo Mori, released in 2012. It's a game we never reviewed for the Dukes of Dice, Sean, but we did talk about it in the early episodes of the show. Long favorite within the Duchy. Not breaking embargo to say that we liked the original Libertalia quite a bit. A game that does a great job. I'll describe the core game before I describe anything else. The core game of basic Libertalia, you have matching decks of cards, and what's going to happen is you are going to draw a certain number of characters, and then I'm going to draw a matching number of characters. So, for instance, if you had numbers 4, 9, 11, 15, and 18, and I would grab those same numbers, add them to my hand. We would then all select one card to play at the same time, flip and reveal, and add them to a ship, and then claim loot, but activate abilities before we do so. So, that is the gist of Libertalia. Sean, the embargo to discuss reviews of this game wraps up on February 15th, which is one day after the publication day of this show.
Rough.
Again, no problem talking about having played Libertalia, but Jamie tends to ask, just so folks, don't get a jump on whatever else, not to talk about a game from a thoughts perspective.
So Alex, logistically, because
yes.
that's what you brought up.
Logistically,
we've delayed a week.
Yes.
We eventually got to the point where we were willing to delay a week. What's the harm in delaying one more day? We let people know due to an embargo, we're delaying one extra day. Great.
Okay. Then that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Yeah. So for folks who see why this episode was late again, there's your explanation.
So what happens? Hold on. What happens if I forget about the embargo? I publish this on the 14th. Does Jamie ostracize you?
I think it's unlikely because this isn't even if this isn't going to be a full review. I played this game one time, a group of 4 players. I can give broad thoughts. You already know, generally speaking, that I like Libertalia.
Me too.
So, I mean, it would be shocking if the new edition all of a sudden made it terrible, right?
That'd be pretty bad.
That'd be pretty bad. Good news, it doesn't. So, I will dive into this because I think some of this has been out there, and I think even if you did the accidental thing, this isn't really a review. So, here are some differences in Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest. One of them is in the original version of this game. When you had 2 players play the same numbered card at the same time, those cards had a priority number in the bottom corner that broke the tie. There wasn't anything mechanically within the game that did it. It was just sort of by chance the tie was broken and hopefully something cool happened and it worked out in your favor. What this game does is it has a reputation track that is a part of the economy of the game. The reputation track determines your starting money each round, and it also determines in what order you'll lay down cards. The further to the right on a ship your card is, the earlier you get a pick of loot. In most cases, that's something you would tend to want. You want control of what loot happens, but there are some cases where you want to be further left. Manipulating reputation is an interesting mechanic in this game. But it takes what had been a chance element before and turns it into something you can control and play with and mess with as the game goes on.
That makes sense. That's cool.
The abilities are fleshed and rebalanced. I have not played the original in some time, so I can't tell you exact differences there. But if I recall, there are different... the treasures do different things. The loot does different things in this game, and there's a dark and stormy side on the other side of this that has the loot do a completely alternate set of things. So there's one set of things the loot can do, or if you play the other side of the board, there's another thing the loot can do. One other thing this edition of the game does, Sean, is it adds in a 2-player and solo way to play, because that's sort of a thing that Stonemaier tends to do. The 2-player, broadly speaking, adds in an overlay that you'll put on the boat track that adds a 20.5 card. And basically, if you play cards to the left that are of a lower value than 20.5, they have to go to the left of that, and the character who's next to that, the other player, gets to remove a piece of loot before they would get a chance to pick, effectively. So that's one thing that happens that enables the 2-player game. Haven't tried it out yet. Looks pretty cool. Beyond any of those things, there's refreshed art, really nice kind of Azul-esque tiles that represent the loot, and nice dials, and if you get the coin upgrade, some nice coins. So I liked Libertalia a lot in the first place. I like that this gives you another lever to control for what is a pretty significant part of the game, where your thing goes on the ship. If you like Libertalia, you will probably like this too. I don't know why you wouldn't. And yeah, that's my broad thoughts on Libertalia. That was a lot of logistical talk for not a lot of payoff there. But,
well, okay, so here's the question. So I'm someone that still has Libertalia in the library, in my personal library. I love Libertalia. My preference is to only play it at 5 players, which I believe was the max player count. So how strongly, I mean, do I need to get this updated version?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, Well, tell me why, Alex. Why do I need this updated version?
It plays a wider range of player counts, so you can play this all the way down to solo or 2. And from what I can see from the system, it looks like it would actually probably work pretty well.
Okay.
It also plays up to 6, so you have that kind of baked in there as well. So I don't know if the original played 5 or 6 at its max, but I mean, it at least goes up to that. And that is a meaningful part of the system, that reputation track, the biggest difference to me in the game, and that adds some cool flavor and effects. I also think the art looks super cool, so I'm a big fan of that as well.
Oh, no, it did play 6. The original did play 6. Yeah, I prefer 5 minimum, 5 or 6, I think. Well, let me ask you this, though, Alex. This is really the next question. I think this is the question on everyone's mind. You generally tend to recuse yourself from discussing Stonemaier games. So how much did Jamie pay you for this positive opinion?
I mean, a free copy of the game and a general friendship. Yeah, I know.
Oh, my goodness.
Senior Detective Sean Ramirez has exposed the lies.
Nailed it.
Yep. Well, cool. Anyway, those are games we've played. Some old ones for Sean, for some new ones for me. After the break, our review of The Hunger. Well, Sean, the Game Toppers 3.0 Kickstarter is in the books, and thanks to a whole bunch of backers, Game Toppers had a heck of a Kickstarter campaign, more than $800,000 raised to get more Game Toppers, new features, all sorts of fun stuff headed folks' way.
Wait, did you say 800,000?
I did say that amount. Yes.
Oh my goodness. That's a ton of money.
Sean, did you make it in time? Are you part of that group?
It's over? It's over? Like over?
No, it's done. I'm sorry you missed your window. But the good news, Sean, is that if you keep an eye on the Game Toppers LLC website, the late pledge manager should be open in the near future. Take a look there, and you can still get in on all the fun, get the newest features, get yourself a Watson, or get yourself, I don't know, whatever you want. Awesome game mats, rails, something cool to really take your gaming experience to the next level without getting a fully dedicated gaming table, which is exactly what Game Toppers is all about. Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com, because if it ain't a showstopper, it ain't a Game Topper. This week, the Dukes of Dice are taking a look at The Hunger, a game about vampires out on the night, stalking their prey. But is this game a true nighttime romp, or has the sun come up and burned it to a crisp? We'll tell you.
Alex, that intro sucked. No, that's a good Bela Lugosi. That was good. I like that.
Yeah. I was practicing my vampire voice before jumping in on this. So,
all right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Clank. I'm sorry, The Hunger. Excuse me. Oh, how awkward.
Oh, you hate to see it.
Let's talk a little about The Hunger then. Designed by Richard Garfield, from Renegade Games. Art by Marta Ivanova and Jocelyn the Jock Maillet. That's the second time I've referred to Jocelyn as the Jock. Yeah.
A note, Jocelyn, I believe, at least from looking previously, and I'm going to confirm this as I'm saying it. Last time we did a review was Machi Koro 2. That's the last review we did for this show, because it's been a bunch of other nonsense in between. The one that we've done together, I should say.
Sure.
And no, never mind. Nope. She did not do the art for Machi Koro 2.
I didn't think so. That didn't sound
She did the art for maybe a different... who knows? Wow. It doesn't matter. Dumb comment retracted. All right, carry on. Sorry, I've interrupted your flow. Yeah.
So this is a deck building game where you are taking on the role of a vampire who is leaving the safety of your vampiric council? Dang it. Castle. I'm thinking
Sean.
What we do in the shadows. Yes.
Sean, did you play as Count Ducula?
Okay. Moving on. So yeah, you're leaving the safety of your vampiric castle to go out into the surrounding mountains, then the plains, and then the forests. Maybe sometimes you're taking a ship route. Basically, there's sort of a spiraling trail that leads away from the castle, although there are multiple paths that you can take, but essentially it's a spiral. And what you're doing on your turn is you're generally playing 3 cards from your deck. You draw 3 cards every turn. And then you're using a currency of those cards to allow you to move. But then you can also use that same currency to hunt, which is letting you buy new cards to add to your deck from the card gallery, so to speak. And so it's very important kind of where you wind up as you move, because there are certain spots which will give you some bonuses, which I'll talk about. But then you also want to potentially have points left over to be able to go on these hunts so you can get some various cards. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of cards that you can acquire. So at the start of the game, you only have these vampire cards. And generally, these vampire cards give you some amount of currency. And then there may be some special effects where if you play it this turn, maybe you get a bonus point for hunting a human, or this may be worth 1 currency. But if you happen to have a human in your play area, then you get 3 currency instead. Okay, so those are
Sean,
yes.
Did you add those up normally, or did you try to count them?
Wow.
1 action point. 2 action points.
The thought never even crossed my mind, Alex.
It should have.
Okay, so there's more vampire cards that you can acquire from the gallery of cards. There are also human cards, and these human cards, generally speaking, are going to give you 0 currency once they're in your deck and you're playing them. They kind of clog up your deck. But the bright side is that when you hunt them, you're going to gain points, and they're variable points anywhere between, I think, 1 and 5, and there's some X points too that will count certain things. And so you'll get those points immediately. And then you'll also get bonus points depending on where you hunt them. So if you hunt in the mountains, there's no bonus points. If you hunt in the plains, you get +1 point per human. In the forest, you get +2 points per human. So those are humans. But the other thing is there's different flavors of humans, so to speak. Basically, there are peasants, and then there's military, and then there's nobility, and then there's, I think, the church, like the ecclesiarchy humans. And there are certain things that are going to care about what type of humans you get, because there are these little plaques that are kind of endgame scoring. There's 2 endgame scoring things that are universal. You start with a random 1 of 2 that you look at the start of the game. You can acquire more of these plaques at certain spots along the board as you play. So one of them might say, okay, if you happen to have the most fleur-de-lis, which are the nobles, then you're going to get 4 points or whatever at the end of the game that you've hunted and that you've made part of your deck. Some of the humans also can hurt you in some ways. So there are some humans that actually give you negative currency, -1. There are some humans that are a little spicy, Alex. They're a little spicy, and they make you move to the nearest well, which may make you move either forward or backwards, which could be very good, could be very bad, depending on the timing of it. And it's a force thing. And then there's also these drunk humans, which basically make you move 4 spaces away from the castle. Now, early in the game, that's really good. Or that can be really good, depending on what you're trying to do. Because early in the game, you're trying to move away from the castle, because there are some richer rewards the farther away you get from the castle. But now I'm going to kind of tell you something really important about the game. You don't score any points at the end of round 15, if you have not made it back to the castle, or at least the castle environs. I think it's the 4 spaces that are adjacent to the castle. If you haven't made it back there, you're going to lose. So it's kind of like Clank, where you're delving into the dungeon, but at a certain point you need to come back out. Otherwise, you're in big trouble.
I'm sorry, did you describe this game as kind of like Clank?
Very much like Clank, Alex. So okay. Those are some of the human cards. There's also more of those vampire cards that I mentioned earlier, and they vary. Everyone has the same deck essentially, but there are some additional vampire cards that give you some unique special abilities. Then there are also familiar cards, and these familiar cards, they have this ready ability, which means when you acquire it, you can choose to either put it into your discard pile, or you can choose to put it on top of your deck so that you can draw it that next turn. And then once you play it, it stays out in front of you, and it has some sort of ongoing ability. So these are like wolves and bats and various things. Did I fully describe all of the types of cards? I did. What I didn't describe is how you acquire them. So I did mention that you need to have some leftover currency. And basically, at the start of the game, you have, depending on the player count, a number of cards in the 3 cost column. So they're going to cost you 3 of your currency, and then any cards that aren't purchased are going to slide to the right. Now they cost 2, and you repopulate the 3 column. And then again, they're sliding. And what can wind up happening is if there are any of the 2s unpurchased, they're all going to sort of pile up with any 1s. So you could wind up buying 2, 3, 4 different cards that only cost you one of that currency if they've gotten to that point. But you want to be careful, right? Because you don't want to clog up your deck too much, because there can be turns where you're just like, oh, I just drew 3 humans, and I can't move. Well, that's a problem. All right, let's talk about spaces on the board. So I mentioned before there are these wells, and the wells can affect the spicy humans that wind up in your deck. But also, if you end your turn on a well, you can actually hunt twice. Normally, you can only hunt once per turn. There are 4 distinct spots that let you digest humans that are either in your play area or in your discard pile, and it's 1 for each quote-unquote suit of humans. And the interesting thing here is digesting is basically removing it from your deck, but it still counts as part of your collection of cards for endgame scoring purposes. There are also different spots on the map where you will populate different tokens that will give you some bonus points, and then they'll give you some additional bonus. At the very end of the path, there are these bloody roses, and they all are these ready items that will stay out, and they may give you some additional currency. They may give you some bonus points if you do certain things or another. There's also the inn, and the inn is pretty interesting because I think, are there 3 cards at the inn?
Yes.
Yeah, 3 cards at the inn. You go end at the inn, you say, I'm going to hunt the inn, and you get all of the cards, but you don't get to see what those cards are. They may be really good. They may be really bad. They may clog up your deck. Who knows? And then they repopulate to a certain extent. So basically, at the end of the game, if at the end of round 15, if you've managed to get back to the castle or to the cemetery surrounding the castle, then you're going to be in the points, and you're going to add up all of the end game points that you may have. So, for example, there are familiars like the wolves, and some of the wolves will say this card is worth 1 point at the end of the game for each wolf that's in your deck, and that can be pretty good. So you've gained all these points throughout the game. You're going to add up the end game points from some of the cards that give you end game points from some of those the placards. I think they're called quests or missions. The missions.
Missions is correct.
Yeah, those can give you some points. The missions also might have some sort of like one-time effect during the game, which is could be pretty interesting. But anyway, you add that all up, and whoever has the most points is the greatest vampire, and thereby the winner of the hunger.
Sean, your first impressions of this game?
All right. Well, I was pretty interested in this game. Anytime there's a Richard Garfield game, I'm going to be interested. And for the most part, obviously there's magic, but most other Richard Garfield games have been really good. I mean, he is a genius game designer. And so yeah, I had high expectations for this game. I like the vampire theme quite a bit. I like deck builders, but it was also very clear that this seemed very reminiscent of Clank before I ever read the rules or played my first play. And it's interesting that it was Renegade that did this, because it's almost like they can get a pass for doing this since they're the same publisher as Clank. If some other company had published this, I felt like I would have been a little more critical of it in some ways.
So, Sean, a bit of trivia for you. The designer of Clank is a gentleman named Paul Denon, Paul has had another hit game, really big hit game.
Yep.
What was it? Do you know it offhand?
Dune Imperium.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah, Paul's gone on to some awesome things, but I would agree with you. The fact that it kind of came from the same publisher, even though it wasn't labeled as a Clank game, does give it somewhat of a pass, even though it's a different designer. Is that totally fair? I don't know. But I had heard similar things, Sean. My impression was, oh, this box looks nice. Oh, Richard Garfield. I like Richard Garfield. Renegade. I like Renegade. And then I heard a little bit about Clank. Well, I like Clank, so if it kind of uses that at its core, maybe this will work pretty well. Yeah. So that was broadly the initial thoughts before opening and diving into the rules. Sean, did you learn this game from the rulebook?
I did not. This was a teach by Eugene. I got my first play in a couple weeks ago, about a week or two before COVID. And yeah, Eugene did the teach. But overall, I've gone through the rulebook, and it's a pretty straightforward game. I think it's a simpler game in a lot of respects than Clank. I think it's probably a lot more accessible than Clank. And I think the rulebook is solid. I do remember the Clank rulebook. I don't know if it's been updated, but the initial Clank rulebook is terrible. It was really bad. This one I didn't think was bad. I thought it was a serviceable rulebook.
I learned the game completely from the rulebook, and I was certainly able to figure it out. I don't think it was quite as intuitive as it could have been, if memory serves. I don't have a specific thing to peg that on. I think some of that is not having player aids or guides, and where I most noticed this, Sean, was on the spaces themselves.
Sure.
What does a well do, and how does that work? The cemetery is this, and you can't hunt in the cemetery, and you can't hunt in the castle. This is a rose space, and this is how that works on a hunt. This is how this works on it. So there are a bunch of different spaces, and it's trying to get that all straight in your head is one of the more confusing elements of this game. It is a relatively simple and straightforward system, and an accessible game in many regards. That part, questionable for me. So I learned it well enough. It's not a terrible rulebook by any means. But I think in terms of some of the, how do you intake this information? How do you understand this game? There are some areas where there was more confusion than I wanted. Other than that, the rulebook does do a good job on the back of laying out the keywords, various keywords on the cards. What does ready mean? What does spicy mean? What does this mean? So that stuff was successful. Other pieces, it was fine. I wouldn't say it was terrible, but I don't recall it being this is an amazing rulebook either. So somewhere in the middle.
Okay, fair enough.
Art and components, Sean.
I like the art quite a bit. I think the art is very solid. I think that there are some component issues. Number one, the board, at least here in Albuquerque, was warped. I mean, pretty significantly warped. And then also the vampire tokens that are moving around the map. They're these wooden circles, and they appear to be screen printed. They took a beating. I mean, so basically you move your character, then you're supposed to flip it down so that you know that who's moved. And that's because the turn order depends on who is farthest away from the castle. And then there are some tiebreakers depending on which route you are. There's the road, and then there's the railroad, and then there's the shipways. But you flip it over, and I don't know. I think that this was Empire's copy, and it probably had gotten, I wouldn't say any more than 7 or 8 plays. And I got my final play last night, and the screen printing was in bad shape. Like on 2 of them. On 2 of them, it was in pretty bad shape. And I was like, wow, that's not good. I don't know. That seems like an easy fix, like an easy seal or something. I'm just not sure why they got scratched up so much. I mean, all you're doing is flipping it over. It's not like you're sticking them in a bag and rustling them up or anything. I don't know. It was weird. Did you notice that in your copy at all?
I didn't notice that yet, and that could be from fewer plays, fewer players. I'll give the pandemic caveat. I only got a chance to play this at 2 with Abby and locally with another good buddy here, whose name I'm forgetting because I'm a jerk. And yeah, no, it's pretty rude. Patrick, thank you. That took longer than it should have. But yeah, only got a chance to try this out at 2 players. I will say, Sean, you reminded me of something, another area where the rules kind of a little bit clunky. Who goes next in the turn order? Trying to remember the different paths and having a sense of what breaks that tie and why. That was clunkier than I probably wanted it to be, which I think can describe some chunks of this game in general.
Yeah.
So,
well, what I'll say, Alex, is you should have some leftover matte varnish spray. Do you not?
No.
Did I not send you matte varnish?
I don't think so.
Really? The clear spray? I didn't send that to you?
I don't think so.
Well, okay.
Anyway.
Oh, never mind. I was going to say spray your counters with the matte varnish, but if you don't have that, or you can just get some nice lacquer. Just lacquer them up.
I mean, that implies it's going to get enough plays for this to matter.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So I will say art and components, I agree with you broadly. Decently laid out cards, good information, solid, clear enough iconography, looks compelling on the table. This is usually, and again, this is kind of where we would typically discuss in rules. I think for the amount of game you get, setup's definitely pretty bearish on this one. There's a lot to do. Set up the tavern, set up the roses, shuffle this up in this certain way. I don't know. There's a decent clip of things to do to get this thing ready.
Yeah, so. I agree. It's kind of like Clank, where you're setting up all these different tokens in very specific spaces. Yeah, no, I'd certainly agree with that. I will agree with you. I think the iconography was really solid. On the human cards, they all tend to be the different types of humans all tend to be the same color, and then they have the same iconography. And then if it's spicy, there's a little red pepper there for you. If they're drunk, they've got little flagons of ale or whatever. So yeah, overall, I think the iconography was good. But yeah, there are some component issues that I had.
Gameplay. I'm very curious where you ended up on this one, Sean.
Yeah, this is one of those times when I say to myself, if I were reviewing this game in a vacuum, I think I would like this quite a bit. And I do. I did like it quite a bit. I enjoyed my plays. And I would certainly play again. I didn't purchase it. I'm not going to purchase it. In contrast, I own Clank, and I will continue to buy expansions for Clank. I think Clank is the better game. I think Clank is a little bit more complex, and it's not quite as accessible as the Hunger, but I don't know that it's that much harder to get people into. Clank has multiple types of currency, whereas the Hunger has just the one, and that's not necessarily a detriment, because there are some intriguing things about that, right? There are intriguing things about, okay, how far do I want to move? Man, I really want to move this one space, because if I go to this one extra space, I'll be able to digest this human that's terrible for me, but then I won't be able to buy this card, and I really want this card. But then there's also concerns of, man, I really need to go first next turn. And so maybe I need to move farther. So there are a lot of interesting decisions to be made here. And I would say that I even like the theme better. I like a vampire theme better than I like dungeon delving. But, and I feel like I'm jumping ahead to like final thoughts, but I just feel like I don't know if I'm going to continue to play this game over a game like Clank. Or over a game like Dune Imperium, even. I think it's good, but I think it just seems like it came out a little late for this style of game. A couple of years too late.
So I would agree with you that if I haven't played or tried Clank, I definitely find the theme of being a vampire really intriguing. And the time limit in Clank is imposed by a dragon that awakens and chases after you and tries to burn you up. The timer in this game is the sun coming up. Mm-hmm. Makes perfect thematic sense. We're kind of jumping the gun here and a little all over the place, but so what else is new? That's how that tends to go. I I think for me what it is, Sean, and this isn't perfectly crystallized, but let me know if this resonates with you. I think for a game to be really interesting, sometimes it needs interesting restrictions. As an example, we talked earlier in the show about Scout. This idea of you're not able to rearrange the cards in your hand is an interesting restriction and gives you opportunities to feel clever, to work around it. It sets up those kinds of moments. This is a game that is at its core a deck builder, but the ability to acquire cards is fairly open. I can hunt any type of human as long as it's on the hunt board and I have the points to afford it. Not based on anything thematic, restrictive, anything else. And also, because it's a 3-card hand, yes, there's an opportunity to draw more. There isn't as many opportunities to build combos and feel as clever. You could do it, and I think there's a deeper level to this game than you would expect. But that's a piece of this too, because you're not dealing with a 5-card hand or a more rapid pulse through the deck. You don't have the opportunity to use those as much. It does give you some moments of feeling clever. I comboed this move, so I was able to digest this and then use this token to move to do this, or I got a spicy card, but that allowed me to move forward to the next well, or I hunted multiple times and got a bunch of cards, and those happen to sync well together. But a lot of times it feels more accidental than intentional, which I don't think should be the feel in a deck-building game. And because of the nature of how you hunt cards, because of how open that is, less restrictions there. Like, part of what's great about Clank is it's a convoluted pathway to get to things. You have to go down blind alleys, you have to fight creatures along the way. There's different things that can kind of disrupt and prove tricky. There aren't as many of those in play with this game. And so it's less of a satisfying experience for me. But if I'm playing with someone who's relatively new to games, who's, again, more in that kind of King of Tokyo crowd, I think this game does a lot of things right in that regard, and I think it is accessible enough that you would probably get a pretty good reception from it. So, on the one hand, it suffers from the fact that Clank already exists, and it's quite similar in a lot of ways. On the other hand, I like the art better, I like the theme of this better, and I think for newer players, they would really appreciate this game. I think it could be... I could imagine this being, if I were just getting into games, one of the first games I loved. Just based on how it's constructed. So I think you're right. It's one of those where our depth of experience, much like we talked about with Fort, has us view this through a different lens than we might otherwise. But I think a lot of our listeners do tend to be more longer-time hobby gamers, and so be aware of that. A decent one if you don't already own Clank or have that in your collection. A decent one if this is a kind of game, you like deck builders, you want to introduce your group to something interesting. And let's pivot to this, thematic. Sean, did the theme add to this game or prove beneficial? I think we've both kind of said yes to a degree, right?
Yeah, no, I think so. And it's in a lot of stupid ways. And I say that with love. So
I agree with you. Yeah, so that's the term I would use.
So you eat a spicy human, which might be a little racist. I'm not sure. I'll have to take a closer look. And when you then play that, or when that human comes out of your deck and into the play area, you are forced to go towards the nearest well. And that may or may not be in the direction that you want to go. That's kind of funny, I think. Although technically vampires aren't supposed to need food or drink other than blood, but all right, that's fine. Depends on your vampire lore, what particular lore you're following there. And then I think with there's a vampire card where it's like Form of Bat, and it lets you skip over wells and skip over other vampires, and that's really cool, right? That makes sense. That seems thematic, and there's lots of these little touches in the game that you're like, oh, okay, I can see how that comes into play. So yeah, I think it definitely adds to the experience. I think it's interesting how you can take a quicker path down by the boats, but it's going to hurt you in terms of priority of hunting, which kind of makes sense, right? Because you have a limited population to hunt among on the boat, but it's going to let you move around the spiral a little bit faster. So I think there's a lot of that there, and I think it all helps the game, and adds to kind of the immersion to a certain extent.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sean, I'm going to go backwards.
Okay,
because I've done this for every section of this review. No,
it's perfect. It's perfect because that's what you're doing in the game, right? You're going outwards among the spiral,
and then you go back.
Then you decide when to head back.
Should have done the review that way. The bonus you would get for hunting on the plains versus mountains was clunky. I get why it's there.
Yeah,
you want to prioritize people for going further out from the spiral. It just felt oddly clunky when you were adding points. Okay, I get 1 bonus for having this character for every human I hunt. I get the number of bonus for this, and I get bonus for the region I'm in. It makes sense, and I get why it's in the game. It felt clunky. Small thing. I agree with you on theme. I loved little touches like the parasol. Gives you an extra turn because you can use it to protect yourself from the sun for a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a fun touch to me, and game has a lot of those little touches. Again, evocative art. It all comes together. Yeah, I enjoyed it from that standpoint. There's some weird thematic things like I don't understand why going to a certain building would allow you to better digest a human. But c'est la vie. Like it doesn't kill the game, hurt the game, anything like that. So, yeah, thematically it adds a lot. Before we wrap up the review, Sean, guild thoughts on The Hunger? We had just one from Sylvain Lacroix, who says, the sales pitch of The Hunger is right down my alley. Richard Garfield designing a vampire-themed combo-driven deck builder with some push your luck and a board that reminds me of Clank? Heck yeah! However, after playing 3 games so far, I can say that the game doesn't live up to the hype. It does a lot of things right, but it's not really exciting, and there's not a lot of combo elements. There are no, I feel really clever moments, and the tension to get back to base is not as exciting as Clank. It's sad because the game is not bad either, but I found that Clank did everything a little better than The Hunger. I will give it a disappointed 3. So we've sort of done final thoughts already. We've been a little all over the place. Sean, where are you at with this one on a final score?
Now I'm trying to figure out why those 4 distinct spots let you digest those types of humans.
There might be a good thematic reason. It just didn't immediately occur to me while playing.
So I didn't look to see if this was in the rulebook or not, but my feeling is that you feed on. So when a human comes into your deck, you fed on it, but it's sort of a what's the character's name from Dracula that goes crazy and he's in the insane asylum. So I think it starts with an M. It's gonna drive me crazy. Anyway, and they're sort of like in your retinue. They're a
Sean,
human familiar. Yeah.
Is it Macula?
No, good Lord. And then at some point you basically bleed them dry, and that's the digesting of them. And maybe you're able to do it. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Okay. Final thoughts. I think it's a German name. It's like M and it's German. I'll look it up. Okay. So we rate games here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. A 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite that is a contender for the top 10. And so now I have to figure out where I'm going to stick this game. It is not a 6. It is not a 5. Is it a 4? Maybe. It's certainly not a 1 or 2. Not by any stretch of the imagination. 3 is game is okay, not exciting while playing the right situation. I don't think that suits it. I don't think it's a 3. I think it's 4. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs to the Duchy. I think it's probably an unenthusiastic 4. It is
a begrudging 4.
It is it's a 4 that's in torpor, so to speak.
Ooh.
To use the vampiric parlance. I can't give it a 3. It's a better game than a 3. It's just barely a 4.
I think this is a classic case where we know it's a 4 now, but you kind of know on the double take it's not going to be a 4, right?
Well, I don't know. I think the accessibility is good. I think the theme is good. I do feel clever during the game. We didn't talk about how when you finish on the same space as another vampire, you can move it one space either forward or backwards. And that could be devastating. I almost died the last game because I was in a space where I was going to jump ahead because I had a card that let me move to the next well, but they moved me in such a way that it would have had me move backwards instead. And I was just like, oh no. But there were moments when I felt clever.
Sean, there's moments of tension too.
Yes.
At least in both of my plays. One of them, I didn't make it back in time. I got burned to a crisp because I drew badly on my last draw. The other one, I did make it back to the castle, and it made all the difference. So there's those moments too, moments of tension, which I think are important to have in a game like this. You want to have it feel like a stretch, like you've really pushed your luck, pushed the limit to make it out and back. And I certainly didn't feel like I had extra time to just mess around and hunt for the heck of it. So tension and some moments of cleverness, though. I that resonates less with me with this game. So, Sean, I am pretty much in the same boat, and this game is helped by the fact that Abby liked this game better than I did.
Cool.
Clearly liked it better than I did. She found it thematic. She liked, and this is her description of it, she liked the fact that it had more of a solitaire kind of feel, like you could kind of work on your own puzzle and not affect other people's too much. I don't know your deck well enough in a lot of cases to know what you're really looking for or eyeing among the cards out there. There are so many options in many cases. Turn order can matter, but it didn't, at least at 2 players. It might matter at higher player counts. What was your experience with that, Sean?
Yeah, I've only played 4. Both games I played of it were at 4. Here's the thing. If it weren't for COVID, I probably would have gotten more plays of this in. Like I enjoyed this well enough, and I'd certainly be more than happy to play this again. But yeah, I don't know. We still come back to Clank, and I think Clank is a better game in a lot of ways. Although I would say that this is definitely worth taking a look at.
Okay.
So
I'm about where you are. I'm kind of a reluctant 4. A good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. I prefer Clank personally, at least from my memory of Clank, and it's been some time. But I think the art and look of this I like a little bit better. I like the theme of this better. Even if I don't like the game quite as much, I think good describes it better than okay. So
yeah, I agree.
We'll see how it does on the double take, but that's where we both stand for now, kind of in the same ballpark. So that'll do it for the Duke's review of The Hunger. Sean giving this one a reluctant 4, and Alex matching with also a reluctant 1, 2, 3, 4.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, before we wrap things up, we're looking back at episode 243, Technicolor, where we reviewed Holi. Sean, you went back
Alex.
Yeah.
Technicolor.
Oh, yes, because it had the U in there.
O-U-R, yeah, Technicolor. Have you seen the SNL new paint sketch?
I have not.
Ooh, it's a good sketch.
Okay. Well, anyway. Technicolor, where we reviewed Holi. Sean, you listened to this one, and you seemed surprised by what you were hearing when you listened back to this episode.
Yeah, it's weird. You have this weird voyeuristic thing you do where I listen back and you watch me react, although you can't hear what I'm listening to. So yeah, I gave this a 4, and I said it's a very solid 4. I should probably point out that this is kind of it's an abstract game, and you're moving pieces around on this 3-layered board. It's basically 3-dimensional, and you decide when you want to move up. And but yeah, I gave this a very solid 4, and I said this feels like a really good version of a 4-player Onitama. You gave this a high 4, which that's higher than a solid 4. Initially, you were worried that Abby wouldn't like it because it felt too chess-like, but it turned out to be a sure for her. You said this game is not going anywhere. It will not be culled from the collection. Could get as high as a 5 if you've had a chance to play it at a higher player count. And the interesting thing, the quarantine caveat was that we both only played it at 2, we both suspected that this game would be awesome at a higher player count. I have not given two thoughts to this game or for this game in the last year. I barely remember it. It has very little staying power in my mind. Yeah. I don't remember it. I mean, I do remember it, but it's not something where I'm jonesing to get to play of it. It's something where if it were late at night and we just finished a really good game and someone's like, "Oh, do you want to get one more quick game of Holi in?" I'd be like, "No, I'm just going to go home. I'm good. I'm going to get up early tomorrow. I'm just going to go home now." You have fun with it though.
I don't remember saying anything about like the exact same thought, Sean. It was, I know where it is in my house. It's up in the dining or front living room area on one of the shelves. It looks great. Visually, it stands out. Visually, this is a unique game. It looks really cool when you have it set up and built and good to go. And completely slipped from my consciousness. Have not played it since. Do not remember it well. Maybe we were hopeful that there would be conventions and we would see folks in person in larger player. It hasn't happened. It hasn't been culled from my collection, but it's sort of been culled from my mind, weirdly. I don't know. I recall maybe vaguely enjoying it, but this is one of those that's in this weird dead spot in my brain that isn't common for a double take. So I couldn't tell you why it isn't so memorable, but yeah, there you go.
It's certainly a weird one, and it's one where I could almost give this a 2-point drop. But okay, so a 2 is game has some merit but has significant issues. It doesn't have significant issues. Why I say a 2 is sort of the unspoken, like, I don't want to play this game again. And I kind of don't. It's not that I don't, it's just that I have no interest in playing this game again. I think it's better than a 2, and so I can't give it the full 2-point drop. It's going to wind up at a meager 3, which is, for the record, a 3.23. That's a meager 3. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. And even that's very unenthusiastic.
Sean, it hasn't taken that far of a dive in my mind. And this is one of those where the beauty of a box can do wonders for a game, at least as far as staying in the collection or staying somewhere where I can see it. And this game has a beautiful looking box, so that has nothing to do with the gameplay at all. I think it probably belongs more in the category of a 3. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. But I'm fearful that, again, because there wasn't that opportunity to play it at a higher player count, it's just sort of slipped into a weird spot here where, again, it's not about the merit of the game as much as it's about the circumstances, situation, timing. Sometimes a game gets released at a non-ideal time, and for whatever reason, this seems to be that game. So I think realistically probably at a 3, but because it isn't going anywhere and there's nothing, I guess it's technically a 3, but it's a reluctant 3 on the other side. It feels like, I mean, if I believe you when you say that I liked this game a lot more a year ago, I just don't remember that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, weird. Oh, the Guild had some thoughts on this one. BJ from Board Game Gumbo said, I played Holi with Jay Bell last year. It was one of those games that I don't need to own, but really enjoyed that one play. I could see families who like abstract games, like we do, loving the 3D nature of the puzzle. Honestly, it was one of the more unique experiences Jay has brought to our game table. I'd give it a rising 3 on the Ducal scale because I kind of want to play it again.
And then Brett Maurer says, while we played Holi a few times and enjoyed our plays and the awesome table presence, it ultimately made it to our trade pile. The gameplay just isn't varied enough game to game for it to be a long-term keeper. There are other quicker games of similar weight that we prefer to play instead. Still, I'd give it a low 4. It's a good game.
Well, there you go. That is our double take on Holi. Drops from a 4 to a 3 for Sean and drops from a 4 to a 3 for me. Kind of an odd one. Yeah. Well, that does it for the double take. Before we wrap things up, Sean, one of the better crop of names we've had in some time. This was a debate to get to our ultimate winner here.
This was really good. This was a really, really good week. A lot of names that could have been the winner for a variety of reasons.
Yep. But we'll start things off with Nate Simons, who came up with high stakes. High referring to the verticality of Holi, and stakes, S-T-A-K-E-S, referring to the stakes that you might use to dispatch with a vampire.
Yeah. And I feel like that was the really clever one. Just like the classically clever one. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then there's D. Shannon with Drain the Town Red as opposed to Paint the Town Red. So there's the painting of a color, which kind of is in Holi because you have all of the powdered colors, and then also the draining because you're feeding, because you're a stinking vampire, man.
It's pretty good. Baker Mitchell came up with What We Do in the Rainbows, referring to all the color in Holi, as well as the show What We Do in the Shadows, show and movie. I've only seen the movie. I haven't seen the show.
Yeah, both excellent. In fact, I'll just say this. A while back when we stepped aside from board games for a minute and we talked about the top five shows or top 6 shows we were watching right then. After we did that, Eugene is like, why didn't you mention season 1 of What We Do in the Shadows? I was like, I have zero idea. I don't know why I forgot that. That's really dumb because it's a fantastic show. And movie.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And then
next up.
Yeah. It's me, right? I'm up. Josh Inger. He suggested lasagna, which I'm like, what? What does this have to do with anything? And then after you explained it to me, I felt so stupid. Richard Garfield is the designer of The Hunger. His name is Garfield. Garfield is also the name of a cartoon cat. And when that particular cartoon cat gets hungry, he wants to eat lasagna. So there you go.
Amazing. Oh, Josh and Gur, we were so close to picking this name. Honestly, if it was just me, that might have been the pick, because the sheer absurdity of a one-word title that makes no sense. But Sean overruled me, so Sean is your, I guess, mortal enemy.
Well, here's the thing. As the one and only one-word title namer, I feel like I have to protect it. So little thumb on the scale there, maybe, to protect Sean Connery.
You also had to protect it from the name father, who came with Unholi, Unholi, which also an incredibly clever name. We had a lot of those this week.
Yeah, I said that this was the most technically proficient of the names, for whatever that means.
Ooh. Yeah. Technical proficiency score, high from Sean.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, very good. Well, hey, I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm sorry for almost destroying the podcast over being dumb. Hang in there. And
I will.
I'm seeing you next month. That's crazy to think,
hang in there.
Or is it April?
It's April. It's April that we're coming.
Oh, 2 months from now. Dang it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
All right. Well, that's going to do it then for episode 268. Again, thanks to Breakdown 777 for the episode title Seasons Feedings. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody. Oh, no. Count you later, everybody. Dang it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on February 10th, 2022. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. You can learn more about Game Toppers on their website, GameToppersLLC.com. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a Game Topper. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, probably. Until then, game on.